No problems. Thanks, John. I tend to wave my arms around a lot, so I'll get distracted by that. Thanks, everyone, for the opportunity to come along and talk today. I have a wonderful job where I get paid to go fishing a lot and using electricity, which is often quite fun. Dangerous sometimes, but fun. I work in those transitional waters, so the fresh water, those estuarine and those nearshore marine environments, so very, very complex ecosystems. And they're complex ecosystems, and we need an ecosystem of people to help manage them, which is why I wanted to list all my project partners I work with. So complex ecosystems require an ecosystem of knowledge and input to provide solutions. So I really wanted to acknowledge all my project partners. And the Australian government who's been funding my project. So Damien's not listening, but yes, he's very good. So Bowling Green Bay and the Ramsar wetland, I mean, everyone knows where it is. It's incredibly rich, incredibly important in terms of biodiversity. It holds wonderful cultural significance. So many important fauna and flora live there. It is an amazing place, it really is. Just yesterday, where you can see the drone video, with students, third-year students down at Blacksaw Creek, they're doing their major assignment, where we're looking at describing the ecology and some of the water quality complex that we have there, to look at the scenario of a marina development, and their job as future leaders is to look at whether a marina development could actually be fitted in the Ramsar wetland. As I say, there's a whole range of different species, plants and animals that live and exist there. They are modified in so many ways. We've already heard some of the processes this morning. I wanted to really make, I guess, a key point that Queensland Government acknowledge that the Bowling Green Bay Ramsar wetland is of high conservation value. It's mapped as high conservation value. It's the highest level they can possibly give it. Although it's incredibly modified, it still holds all these culturally, environmental, water quality services that are really, really important. To give you a species list, this is just just a quick grab of some of the critters and fauna that we commonly see across there. Each of these individual species have their own niche where they live. They live within a very selected habitat and environmental conditions that they require. We start modifying that, we see some big changes, and we've seen that, I guess, over the years on the floodplain. We've seen invasive fish species, as mentioned previously, changes in water quality, all these signs that the system is changing. Yet we still have it mapped as a very high conservation value. So this is the challenge that we're facing. Everyone would know, definitely, although you've got this wonderful wetland complex on the floodplain and the bay, turning 180 degrees, looking back up to catchment, if we were to walk the landscape, we know that we've modified the system. We have a lot of agricultural production there, we have lots of barriers, land use changes in flow, we've heard earlier this morning. Yet we still have this incredibly important conservation Ramsar wetland downstream. And so I think that really is the big challenge for us, making sure that we protect that moving forward. So we have commercial fisheries. There's a banana prawn there, for example. We heard connectivity this morning. Let me give you an example, the mangrove jack. Mangrove jack is a fish species that we know, we love to catch, very, very tasty to eat. This fish species has a life cycle ecology that requires to move across from coral reefs, through our estuaries, onto our freshwater floodplains, and then back out to our nearshore reefs to complete its life cycle. If we lose that connectivity in whatever way, through weeds, through hard engineering barriers, the mangrove jack cannot complete its life cycle. We're going to have big changes in a fish that we know and love. So having a connected floodplain is absolutely critical for this species that we know and love. Damien mentioned a little bit this morning around the turbidity story. We don't have nowhere near the amount of time to explain that, but we do I guess what we have seen is some big changes in the limnology, the actual ecology, the freshwater ecology across the floodplain. We have our turbid waters, which are mostly from the distribution channels, the delivery of water across the floodplain. But we still have these freshwater, clear water lagoons, which are a really, really important habitat. They have a very, very different ecology associated with that. There's very, very different, big differences in temperature, for example, and different aquatic plants in there. So how we manage that becomes really important. Just touching on environmental weeds. Environmental weeds is a ongoing problem, and it's probably going to be an ongoing problem for as long as we have agricultural development on that floodplain. We have a lot of nutrients going across the floodplain. There's a lot of investment into harvesting those weeds, which is great. Which is great for improving oxygen for fish, for example. If the value of our wetland is fishery production, that's a great solution. If our wetland is for water treatment, they're plants, so removing nutrients, the weeds are actually probably a good thing. So how do we get that balance between having a system that's functioning for fish habitat and also water quality is a really hard, very difficult management solution there that we need to think about there. And when we get it wrong, we have major responses. We have this big change. We have, in this case here, large fish kills, which do happen across the floodplain. So I've only got 10 minutes, and I'm going to stay to my 10 minutes. What can we do? Well, we are already doing a lot. We're really doing a lot. And I think, today is another example coming together to talk about, the challenges that we face on the floodplain and the bay itself. There's some great extension work done with project partners. Inky Dry Tropics are absolute champions leading that through their extension program, their wetland and wetlands program. Working with the water boards, so critical to try and resolve some of these problems. Having simple community days with farmers has been so rewarding for me personally, talking to the farmers and telling them that Mangrove Jack story. They can connect, they understand that what they do can impact on a fish that they know that they love to catch, for example. So that's quite an effective tool. That's just a picture of me with a large barramundi. Just had to put one in there. There's been a lot of success in our restoration projects on the floodplain. We've seen some big changes. This is a little creek, crooked waterhole. We're working with the farmer there. We've removed a lot of the vegetation. We saw improvements in oxygen. The oxygen returned, which was great. We started to see barramundi coming back. They were able to get back into this system. It was connected again. So that's a fantastic story. However, the funding project was for 3 years. At the end of the 3 years, there was no maintenance program or funding mechanism in place for this site, and it's now going back to what it was when we started. So unfortunately, the model isn't right there. We've got to come up with ways of making sure that we have a maintenance program in place. And we do have that in other creeks, systems on the floodplain. Sheep Station Creek, for example, is a really good one where we have a funding model in place. We need to upscale that. We spend a lot of money, a lot of extension work with farmers, having these success stories, but we need to invest in that asset now. So my key points are we have a continual delivery of fresh water across the floodplain. We've heard about that. Damien gave an excellent summary of that. In a turbid and nutrient-rich state, that's going to continue to see lots of problems with invasive weeds. How we manage that, whether it be for water treatment or for fishery production, is a really important question that we need to ask. You can't have one necessarily without the other there. We have lots of barriers for fish passage. Inky Dry Tropics are working hard and with the water boards to go through and upgrade those, get those connected again, which is great. Water quality, we've heard a lot today already. I won't touch on that too much. And I think we need to really push for a whole of catchment. Remember that term, integrated catchment management? I've actually heard that coming into conversation now. It's marvellous. Like I learnt that when I was at uni last century. Your whole of catchment management, we need to really take a big step back and manage the system as a whole. We can't have these individual projects working separately. We've got to make sure they're connected and at the scale that we need to see some great outcomes. Collaboration, absolutely. That's been a huge success part of the story that I've had, not only in this catchment but in other catchments. Working with an ecosystem of people, I think, is so critical. And we need good science to provide that support and help share those stories. And so that's been a wonderful and enriching experience for me from my journey looking at wetlands. So that's the last slide.